Hello and welcome to this week's review, the latest episode of My Hero Academia titled No Man is an Island. You know the rules and so do I. Let me know what you thought about this week's episode in the comment section down below and you will be read out in next week's show. And whilst you're there, be sure to let me know about your feelings about this season as a whole, as I will be doing my season-wide review next week. So get them in right now. I'll give you another reminder towards the end of the video. And also, whilst you're down there in the comment section, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, click the bell button, do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants you to do, because YouTube is increasing the scary place of small content creators. Support your local small content creator today. It will do them a power of good. Now, on to the review. For here we have the final episode of this season, and the last Saturday I have to get up early in the morning to watch these things, at least for another 6 or 7 months or so. So we'll start off, as we always do, with the positives, and I have to say that I really enjoyed the confrontation between All Might and the hero killer Stain at the start of this week's episode. It was a moment that was just rich in tension. I'll be honest, I wasn't exactly sure how this was all going to go down between Stain and All Might, and how Stain would react to All Might, and whether or not he would actually end up believing him or not, and what exactly All Might would have done if Stain hadn't ended up believing him. Of course, I think that right here, right now, the big key to this whole scene, this whole sequence of events, is All Might coming to terms with his current state. It's him realising just where he is in life, and the fact that he hates himself for it. He hates the fact that he can't really do anything to stop all this senseless destruction and death that's happening all around him. And he sees the current state of the world as being a result of him not having his powers anymore. Though, to be honest, I kind of think that all this still would have happened even if he had his powers or not, but that's a whole other discussion. Though I did enjoy in this scene how it was Stain who was the one to bring him round. There was a part of me that, I will be honest, would have enjoyed it had this episode just been a long confrontation between All Might and Stain, and it was just All Might having to hide in the ruins so he could get the final blow in on the hero killer Stain and defeat him once and for all. And even without his quirk, he was still able to become a hero, and he's having to fight off Stain with like a plumbing pipe that he just happened to find somewhere. Like, that stuff I would have liked, but I can see why they didn't do that, because I think that ultimately the writer took the sensible and more mature option with this, rather than the gratuitous, over-the-top one. And I should point out, and something I should have mentioned in the opening thing, is that I've lost the cover for my microphone and I can't find my pop shield, so forgive me if you get any kind of impacts happening on the microphone. So anyway, as I was saying, I did enjoy the fact that they ended up going for something that felt more dramatically rewarding and more dramatically interesting than going into the over-top superhero action stuff, which is probably what they would have done in a different program. Like, I just have had a flash as to what the streaming television live action adaptation of this scene would have been. They probably would have had that for at least 10 or 15 minutes, and then you'd have the stuff of Stain having to confront him emotionally and then doing the stuff that he did. And you know what? Before we get too down on a rabbit hole on that, let's continue on. I did enjoy the flashback sequence we got with Stain, as I'll be honest, I kind of expected it to happen, or at least this is what I expected had to be what he was doing. Like when we first saw him a few weeks back, I predicted, alright, is he now going to start going after the villains? And that's kind of what he ended up doing, even if maybe not to the extent I would have liked to see him do. It is nice to just get the actual final definitive confirmation, that during all that stuff and as all that stuff was going on, he did not condone any of it. He was not okay with it at all. And that he is a little bit more of an anti-hero than maybe some of us give us credit for, but I'll be honest, that still doesn't change my opinion of him. I mean, well on him for murdering a sex pervert, but outside from that, I mean, you've killed a lot of people just because of the simple fact that they don't match up with your ideology, mate. Like, you can't get rid of that just by not offing some rando in the background. Like, if he'd have killed Muscular or one of the actual big named villains, maybe I'd a little bit more softer on him, but murdering some nameless no-hoper, that's not much of anything. But anyway, as I was saying, I did enjoy the fact that we ended up getting a better insight as to how he felt about everything that was going on, even if I did feel that we needed to see more of him in this state where he's having to essentially go after his own kind, that he's going after villains rather than heroes, because there really aren't that many heroes left. I'm not sure about the turn on him as a whole, though. I mean, showing him in this new light, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it, because, as I've mentioned previously, I think that there's too much baggage to really complete that transition for me. He reminds me too much of Rorschach, which in turn reminds me of that stupid bloody Zack Snyder movie and all the edgelords saying about Rorschach, oh, he's just like me, which just makes my skin crawl. But anyway, we'll move on. I will say that one of the things that I really did enjoy about this week's episode, and something that I was expecting to enjoy, is the fact that this episode had humour in it. This episode probably had more humour in it than the entire rest of the season combined. And to its credit, it didn't feel out of place at all. It feels very much in keeping with the tone of the rest of the show, and it was well placed and well paced. Whilst, of course, there has been jokes elsewhere in this year's season, they haven't really felt quite appropriate. They've always felt kind of out of place, and they've felt as though they were undermining the stuff that they were in connection with. You'd have this very big and important speech, a big important moment with All Might or Bakugo or whomever, and then you'd have someone doing something silly in the background, and that kind of stuff always felt like it was undermining the drama that they were happening in. And it just kind of felt like a weirdly impotent attempt to lighten the mood, which I don't think this season really had many opportunities with which to do so, even if you were to put stuff in. Which, again, now I'm having flashes of the Marvel Cinematic Universe equivalent where they're all making jokes like a bad 1990s stand-up comedian would. But, again, before I further depress myself, let's move on. I think that with that element of humour within this week's episode, it made this week's episode feel closest to the My Hero Academia that I came to enjoy. That it had, whilst it did have this darker, more serious element to it, it was able to balance out with some fun comedy moments and some genuinely inspiring little speeches and drama and character moments, which, I'll be honest, this makes this week's episode feel the closest to My Hero Academia, which the other 24 episodes of this year's season really haven't. But I suppose we will discuss that in greater depth next week when we get into the season-long review. Now we're getting to a few little quick-fire, smaller things here. I did enjoy the little bit of world-building that we got with the representatives from the other nations and them talking about the heroes of other nations. It was a nice little nod to the movie, which I suppose would have come out around this time, but timing's been a little bit differently, which, you know, I'm talking about the previous movie, which I've already done a review of from last year or so ago. And again, it was, you know, right to show that, as I again predicted previously, that this is all having repercussions across the world. This stuff that's happening in Japan is not just contained in Japan. You've got villains popping up all over the world deciding this is their time to shine, which I do like. Even if I'm not so keen of the fact that they're saying that All For One is behind it all, that is taking the piss a little bit. Like, I can understand people being inspired by him. I can understand having him using his influence in different nations here and there, but to suggest that he's behind all of it, yeah, I'm starting to lose interest in All For One as a villain, because we're in the point of he's powerful because we say he is, which I really do not like. But, you know, one final thing that I will just point out, something that I did enjoy far more than I think I should have done, is the neat little character moment that we got with Bakugo, where he's now getting used to calling Midoriya Izuku, or rather than calling him Deku, which, again, as I've said in the past, shows this maturing of him. It was a small but important moment for him. With all that said and done, let us get into the negatives. And it's only one negative that I have for it, but it's a fairly large-ish negative, I have to say. Which is, I can't say that I like the time frame that they're adding into all of this. Yeah, I know that next season is going to be the last season, but first of all, I don't like the fact that we've gone from, oh, we have 3 months to stop this, to 1 month to stop this, to 3 days, which the progression of that kind of felt a bit lame. It felt like a very weak attempt to ratchet up the drama, when I think that personally it would have been better had we gone into next season. We got maybe 3 episodes into it of them going, we've got to train really hard to defeat All For One. We've got to train harder than we ever have done before. Oh, no, I don't think they can do it. You can do it. You've got to go beyond. We've all got to go into it. And then 3 episodes into it, they realise, oh, no, we don't have a month to do this. We've only got 3 days. And we've just used 2 of them. Oh, no! I think that would have been better than just going in this week's episode, oh, we have 4 months. We have 3 months. We have 2 months. We have 1 month. We have 3 days. Personally, I think, again, that wasn't necessarily better, but it's a different strokes for different focusing. Just because it would be different wouldn't be better. And the other issue that I have with it is the fact that it makes me worry about the makeup of next season. This season, next week's season, not next week's season, but the next season of My Hero Academia is going to be the final one. And the fact they're saying we've only got 3 episodes left, 3 weeks, Jesus Christ, we've only got 3 days left is making me worry that when we actually get into that stuff, that we're only going to have maybe a couple episodes just to ground ourselves, and then the rest of the season is just going to be one long action sequence. Which I'm not exactly thrilled about, because I felt that the half of the season which was that went on way too long, and I'm not exactly sure how we'll be able to stomach, 25, well, it's going to be 25 episodes. I can see them doing a filler thing in the first episode, maybe as a cute little thing of, let's show stars and stripes around Japan, or what's left of it. So that brings us to 24. I can see the final episode being more of an epilogue. So we've got merely 23 episodes of just pure action. Good gravy. If anything, this series, I think this show might need an extra season to just pace it all out, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that next year's season, or probably later this year's season, depending on how it all ends up landing out, is going to be the final one. So we'll see how it all goes. I'm curious as how they'll pace it all. But, 25 episodes is a lot of episodes, and they've already managed to get it all done with, so by the time we see it, oh crap, that means it's going to be, oh no, YouTube's going to be filled with spoilers. Oh, for fuck's sake, not again. I'm going to have to live like a monk for the next 12 months. Oh, bugger. Anyway, whatever, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Now, my feelings overall, I think that this was a fantastic way to end the season. Yes, I have a few gripes about the time frame of it all, but I trust that the writers will stick the landing with this, because, let's face it, if they hadn't done, we'd have heard it by now, because they're pretty much already there in the manga. They've taken a bit of a break, which has freaked certain outlets out. Certain outlets that won't be named, but they irritate the piss out of me whenever I see an article by them. Yeah, they've not done this, they've not done that, oh, they did it, oh, whatever. But anyway, this week's episode was a fantastic way to end the season. It was rich in drama, but also rich in, smattering of action and world building that really, I think, wrapped this season up in the best way possible. It was a return to form. It was a return to the show that I came to know and love many, many seasons ago. And it adds a sense of freshness to it, which I think has been missing. I am curious to see what exactly they'll do next season. I am in two minds about it. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But anyway, thank you all for so far so good. Thank you all for enduring this week's episode. I know it's probably going to be a little bit longer one than usual. Well, that's said and done. Let us get into Comment Corner. Our first comment this week comes from Big X1, who says, I like this week's episode. More slow paced than I think I would have liked, but it's good, and I'm hyped for the next week's episode. Looks like a great send-off for the season, and I agree. I think that last week's episode was a great shift of gears for me, a great way to just slow things down and help us all catch our breath. I think that we have been lacking with episodes like that in this past season, though granted we did get a nice 3 or so episode buffer after all the fighting stuff to just let stuff settle down, even if we were then having to deal with the drama around the Todoroki family. But hey ho, I think that last week's episode was a good change of pace, a good shifting of gears, and this week, yeah, it was a great way to send off this season. I know you don't know that at the time you wrote this, but still, it has been a great way to end off this season. It maybe wasn't as big and dramatic and as climactic as maybe part of me would have liked, but I can respect the fact that we are going for something a little more subdued. Goodness knows what to do for the next end of next year's season, but we'll soon cross that bridge when we've come to it. And next up we have, with the ultimate last minute comment, Ritsuka Godako Fujimaru, who says, so I'm going to leave a comment now, just for confirmation. Yes, Season 7, it will be the last one. As well, it's whilst it's still ongoing, it's already in its final arc, and has been for a while due for the author's health. And there's only that and 2 small arcs from Season 7 to adapt. So not a lot left. So any thoughts on My Hero Academia as a whole? Best get them sorted now. Don't worry, I already do. Also, we got a 4th movie coming, so that'll likely keep us busy until the time the manga ends. Also, Stars and Stripes shows that each country actually has its own #1 hero, as a tagline showed. And without spoiling much, I stopped reading at the beginning of the final arc, so I could enjoy it along with the anime watchers. But what I can say is that that it is a ton of resolutions, reveals, and character arcs that are getting resolved next season. So expect the season to start off with a bang and a movie end of season level fight. I honestly, I can easily see that happening because, as I mentioned throughout this entire show, this entire series up until this point, some of the action sequences with this program are bloody good for what is ultimately, let's just address the elephant in the room here. This is a TV show. This is, for a lot of people, a Saturday morning cartoon show, but frequently it has animated action sequences which are just on par with movie stuff. And even if you just look at it from just a pacing and a choreography point of view, some of the fights in this show easily can easily go above and beyond even what you get in most live-action feature films. I mean, it's in a whole other level, but thank you for your comment, and again, congratulations for getting your comment in 60 seconds before I was about to start recording this week's video. But I will say is that thank you for the comment, and I had a feeling the next season would be the last one, because I had been in two minds about it up until this point, because there was a part of me that was wondering, okay, can you stretch this out to 8 seasons? Because I will be honest, I have gone to ground quite a lot recently as far as My Hero Academia in the wider context and the wider community is concerned. Because of spoilers, I have to use my old YouTube profile to browse YouTube now, because the one that I use for this channel, it's just filled with spoilers for My Hero Academia right now. Thankfully, that's kind of eased off a lot more now, and it's a lot more reactions and reviews, which I'm okay with. Even if I don't agree with the person reviewing it, I'll perfectly settle with someone reviewing this season or this episode, rather than someone talking about, oh my god, I can't believe it. You won't believe what happened in this week's episode of the manga. Bakugo doesn't like mushroom soup. Oh my god. No, that kind of stuff just really irritates the piss out of me. But I have faith that at the end of the day, they will resolve all this stuff quite satisfactory. As I said previously, if they had dropped the ball on any of this, we would have heard it by now, even if it was in very coded terms. I will be interested to see exactly where they go beyond this final season, because, yeah, like they say, there's a 4th movie coming out, which I might do a video at some point in the next couple of weeks or so. Speculation as to what that might end up being. And I'm curious as to see what they do after My Hero Academia, whether or not they're going to try and do a sequel series, which I don't think they will do at this point. Unless they do it where it's set around a different character, and then you could keep the pattern from Vigilantes, where Vigilantes is a different main character, this is a different main character, and that is a different main character. I don't think they do the next generation thing where it's the kids of these characters. I think that would be a bit too premature. I think that, however, that if there is going to be something close to a sequel series, it'll just be them adapting Vigilantes, which is all the more motivation for me to start actually reading Vigilantes, seeing as I do have a copy of it. And I probably will start doing reviews of that in the not-too-distant future. But anyway, thank you for your comments. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you thought about this week's episode and what you thought about this year's season as a whole. Next week, I will be doing my season-long review. I'll be discussing this season as a whole. It will be broadcasting on April Fool's Day, but don't let that put you off. There's going to be no wackiness or shenanigans there, because quite honestly, I don't think I'd be able to fit it in. Thank you all for listening, and see you next time. Goodbye! Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!